Hey guys, Brass Facts here. So I've been doing a lot of long-range content, and naturally, I'm overthinking it. Again. In my previous video, I discussed the singular use case of these rifles to really leverage their impressive capability to achieve area denial. But the thing that keeps coming up in my mind, and perhaps yours, how exactly do we bring a precision rifle to the field? We need to get it to our final firing position, we need to take the shot. Typically, we need to also egress at some point, unless you want to live there, and given the context of what small units do, we also need to lug it around while likely doing recon. We do not have Apaches or entire Marine teams to walk us in or out, and while I'd argue we absolutely will look to avoid fights, sometimes the fight picks you and you need to be able to address that problem should it arise. I talked to Valgear and a recon guy recently, and both of them impressed upon me the importance of everyone in, say, a hypothetical 5-man team or pulling their weight, as you're almost certainly going to be outnumbered, and every person needs to contribute meaningfully to the return fire. And most of us, are not even going to be close to a 5-man team in the context of where a sniper rifle like this would be used. But that brings us to the main issue. In terms of getting to the location, fighting from the location, taking contact, you name it, sniper rifles kind of suck. These are not SPRs. They are very min-maxed rifles. They're heavy, cumbersome, limited ammo, rates of fire, and if shit goes tits up, I would personally prefer literally any other weapon. So that's the video. I'm going to discuss two rifles here, a bolt gun and a semi-automatic sniper system, or SAS, their deployment, the logistics, carrying them, opportunity costs, you name it. Now, this is something that I think is technically already figured out from a military perspective, but as per usual, I want to try things out for myself and understand it through experience because, hey, that's what I do, and if you'd like to come along for this rambly-ass ride, the more the merrier. Before we start, I think it's worth touching on two sort of non-answers, and that is a sniper as an emplaced weapon. Obviously, this is not quite in the vein of the video because the gun is not going anywhere, it's just there. Something that exists at your home base, pre-staged on a tripod, like sniper systems were often in the GWAT on FOBs and outposts, or it just comes with you via a vehicle.
I'm sure they're putting optics on it. Reyes, get the M40 and punch out to that berm. G2, how copy?
Hitman 2, this is Hitman. You are approved to engage those targets. Solid copy.
Fire.
This scene from Generation Kill kind of really illustrates it. The weapon is just sort of along for the ride, and when the capability is needed, out of the truck it comes. Fun Generation Kill trivia, did you know that Fruity Rudy is actually just played by himself? Fruity Rudy, the character, is played by Fruity Rudy, the Marine. How cool is that?
I love you, Fruity Rudy!
I think, to be frank, this is probably going to be the most common use case of these things. Either vehicle born or vehicle was used to bring it to its ultimate location, so you don't really care about the logistics nearly as much. This video was brought to you by Venture Surplus, and this bag is actually something that my group uses. Maestro Beast here has one, and he's used it for intended purpose of being sort of an assault lighter pack. While the designation of 3 days carries the same energy as the 1,000-meter volley sight on a Mosin, it's actually a great pack. Solid form factor, great vibes, and a good backer to help prevent the beach fallification when you stuff this thing full. And perhaps coolest of all, it's designed to directly interface with my third favorite surplus item, the USGI bandolier. Because Venture Surplus sells, well, surplus gear, you can get this banger, we still say banger, right, of a pack for about $70 used pretty heavily. Go ahead, check it out. So let's get back to the topic at hand of actually bringing one of these into semi-contested space on foot as a reconnaissance or light unit would often do. So let's start with the bolt gun because that's the more complicated of the two to figure out. The gun in question is a MDT chassis, American Rifle Company Archimedes Action, Leopold Mark IV scope, and a bipod that costs more than your kid's college tuition after he spent 5.5 years for a 4-year degree. And this whole setup is egregiously expensive, but it's all worth it for that smooth action. No, it's not. I would, this setup is, it's good, but unless you do, competition with this, or you have just a shitload of trust fund money, it's a lot of extra money for not much more capability. But damn, does that action feel nice. This is not too dissimilar from what you might see at an ELR match, which makes sense because this setup came into my possession because an ELR/Army Marksman dude sold it to me at fire sale prices because he bought an entire left-handed setup for his girlfriend, who shortly afterwards was no longer his girlfriend. Hey, her loss, my game. I guess that means I'm his girlfriend now. Why do I look like Grantham when I do?
You do. Oh, that's amazing.
Wow, that's terrible.
Give me a little tassel, would you?
You ovulating?
Thanks, babe.
Yep. With the buttery smooth action and the very nice proof barrel, it is an extremely capable setup, able to put accurate fire at a decent fire rate out beyond, even 1,000 meters. But as soon as the target range drops to within the effective range of a general purpose rifle, say, 400 yards and in, or God forbid, 150 yards and in, you're going to go real quick from an asset to a liability, especially when we factor in extremely limited size and capacity in regards to magazines. You could sort of run this thing and roll with a homie Army of Two style, except one of you is a psychopath and the other guy has a bolt gun jarhead style. I don't know why we're referencing movies so much today, but look, you're a citizen, you're not obligated to do a mission like you are in the military, and I personally cannot imagine a situation that demands a long-range rifle and then to bring a bolt gun and nothing else, entrusting my entire ability to survive a closer contact with my homie with his GPR. From what I understand, the military has actually kind of moved away from this role, and the two-man sniper team concept has been pretty antiquated for a while now, with five-man recon teams being far more common. Or was it six-man? I don't know. I'm not in the military. Regardless, that's all a sidebar. The point I'm making is outside of artificial competitions where, there's one guy with a carbine and one guy with a bolt gun, if you're bringing a bolt gun to the field, which is not unreasonable, you're obligated to bring a second gun for protection. So let's discuss the concept of bringing a second gun. The first instinct is a handgun. It's small, it's compact, and boy does it sure fit the video game aesthetic. Especially we rock something like this TRX Arms Ragnarok SD, but I'm not even going to humor that. I'm the PDW guy. If you got room for a handgun, you got room for a PDW. Like this Flux Raider or Flux 365. Holsterable, compact, lightweight, and much easier to shoot to about maybe 150 meters or so. I'd show footage of my TP9 here, but it keeps fucking breaking.
It happened again, dude.
But this was mostly lip service. The if you can bring a pistol, you can bring a PDW actually just ends up applying to if you can bring a PDW, you can bring a medium-sized rifle, like a 300 blackout size setup. Why? Well, PDWs are great because we can conceal them on body, they're very compact and more, but we don't really care about either of those things. We're already carrying a very large ruck setup, otherwise we probably wouldn't be bringing a bolt gun to begin with, so size is less of a concern, and concealability, well, you're not exactly subtle, bro. So, for once, the why not just bring a 300 blackout holds a good bit of merit. They're slightly smaller than a regular 5.56 gun, while still maintaining that, subsonic, supersonic capability. I've discussed 300 blackout at great length. Check out this video if you care for it. It checks a lot of our boxes. The subsonic ability especially is very useful to dispatch things other than two-legged critters, although we might use it in that context as well, as dispatching animals, something I think is going to be more of an issue than people give it credit for in a reconnaissance setting, be it feral dogs, a mountain lion, or if someone walks into your final firing position and is being quite loud about it. And when shit goes tits up, switch to supersonics and you have an AK in 7.62x39 with AR ergonomics. My preferred setup here would be something like a 9 to 12 inch barreled 300 blackout over the shorter variants, mostly because, well, barrel length does in fact matter, and once again, we don't care about really concealing this thing or fit it in a backpack or whatever, it's a primary weapon.
Oh, he sighted us. The mud has slowed him down.
It's muddy!
If you're broke as dick or just don't care about subsonic performance because it is a major pain in the ass, just run a normal rifle. Here's some footage of an AK. I don't know, here's some footage of a 5.56 gun, whatever, right? As for carrying the actual bolt gun, we don't really want to sling it over our body because, well, the gun, or I should say the optic on the gun, is fairly fragile and we don't want it swinging around. It's also just very cumbersome to have a gun slung to you while carrying a second gun. I've been using this Eberly stock gun sleeve here. It's okay. It's a bit overpriced and over-designed. I would prefer a slightly simpler variant of this, but yeah, I think I just brought the wrong product. But I already have it now, so it works well enough. This whole concept works decently well, where you run one gun and then you carry the bolt gun, in the back. But man, you're paying for it at least baseline with weight. The bolt gun as set up is about 15 pounds. If I were to bring a much more capable bolt gun, like a Magnum cartridge round, an MRAD that we got is about 20 pounds. Your shoulders are going to be feeling it, Mr. Krabs. And I worked out the base setup here to be about 30 to 40 pounds of extra ballast for both guns and support systems. To be fair, though, that is how it do be, and Chuck Pressburg has talked about in one of the Gorgillion modcasts he's been on that he typically used to do exactly that, with setups that weighed that and more, and they just sort of suck it up. Though, to be fair, they were in much better shape than any of us were, and they parse out the items between squad mates, reducing, weight per person a good bit. But instead of, work it out, we can trim a little bit of weight with money. This abomination looking thing, I mean, it kind of looks cool, but it's weird, certainly. I swapped out the chassis on the MDT with another MDT chassis, the HNT26. To be sure, I was provided this by MDT. They reached out to me and they're like, hey, would you like to try an MDT chassis? And I was like, hey, I already bought one. And they're like, hey, we want to give you something anyway. How about this incredibly expensive ultra lightweight chassis? I'm like, wow, that's cool, and here we are. It's a decent chassis, but sort of fragile, as it's obviously, centered around hunting and being as light as humanly possible. It's so damn expensive, so it's hard to justify this for anyone that isn't doing this with fuck you hobby money or doing it, semi-professionally. But man, does it do what it describes on the tin, and it shaved a lot of weight off with the copious amounts of carbon fiber just splurged all over this thing. So, switching to the chassis and perhaps jettisoning the bipod, we end up in the 9.4 pound range for this full setup, which is really not that bad for a full profile, full length barrel and a large rifle scope. And look at that, I once again mistakenly cloned a long range setup, now this time a NLR Hunter setup. Cool. With the tripod that I personally have, we're just a hair shy of 15 pounds, the original weight of just the rifle, and once again, we can parse out some of the gear. We're actually, at this point, not noticeably increasing our kit ruck weight per person given how much capability we're adding to the squad. Looking over at something like the Q Fix or the Sig Cross, it does feel like I might have come at this from completely the wrong angle given how light those end up being, but I'm also not entirely convinced the Fix is as good as KB makes it out to be compared to a 20-inch barrel setup, and the Cross is a Sig product, so, in typical Sig fashion, it shoots when you don't want it to.
Weird. Whoa.
Dude. See, and now it's like at this dangerous point where...
Now, I think you touched a bolt last time and it fired.
Look at that.
What?
So I've been mentioning, shooting positions, tripods, and all that stuff, but let me actually get into that, at least my experience with it. We essentially have three options when taking a longer range shot. The first of which is the one you see me doing most, and is mostly, I think, for carbines and stuff like that. Basically raw dogging the rifle on cover, be it off of a magazine, your handguard, or if you get a little bit more long range setup, we can do a bipod or a shooting bag. Yeah, slight brass facts pet peeve. If you're going to shoot a GPR at medium to longer ranges in an impromptu DM style roll, don't turn your little pillow into a crutch. Stop bringing that thing around. You need to learn how to shoot this thing off of impromptu cover because it's a general purpose rifle. Stop bringing the pillow around. That's for the long range configurations. I'm using this Armageddon Gear one as it's a very useful tool, not just for long range shooting, but stabilized in the prone, zeroing my guns, you name it. It's pricey, but the canvas exterior is quite durable, and the fill is much nicer than just filling your shit with rice or BBs. But yeah, kind of expensive. In fact, how many times have I said something's really expensive? Don't do long range, kids. It's going to ruin your life. Try drugs instead. But yeah, shooting bag as your actual shooting position, it's very nice and consistent. Far more consistent than mashing your poor, very expensive Arca rail between rocks or concrete. Speaking of which, another brass facts pet peeve, since we're on a roll here, stop putting Arca rails on general purpose rifle rails. They don't survive contact with a concrete or rock. They chip and break, and then they cut you because it's just pointy, soft aluminum. So keep it smooth, please. But anyway, back on track. Wow, the ADD is really kicking in as we get about halfway through our monster here. But really, in general, shooting off of impromptu cover is not ideal because it's almost never going to be at the correct height, or you're going to be squatted weird, you're not going to be able to lean into it, or maybe you have to lean into it in a certain way. The point is, it's going to be much more difficult to make an actual, honest-to-God, extreme long-range shot, so we want to have something that is a little bit more stable and consistent. Essentially, we want to build our own shooting position without having to rely on the environment. My go-to has always been a backpack or a bipod and then a rear shooting bag, and from the prone position. For me, it's by far the most stable, functional shooting position. But it does suffer from massive issues that you can probably see from in a lot of this footage, where I need to utterly max out my bipod in order to see over sagebrush. And especially when you're up in elevated positions, be it urban or mountainous, you may not even be able to find a flat place that you can both prone out in and still see the target you're shooting at. Which is why the tripod has become increasingly popular. It hasn't become popular, it is popular. While I do wince in pain with the idea of bringing up to 5 pounds of kit with me so I can shoot a gun, the tripod allows you to shoot when you want, where you want, not where the terrain lets you shoot, which I have begrudgingly come to admit is quite important once you start going past about 700 yards. You can sit, you can stand, you can bring a camping chair and sit on that or do some weird squat, it doesn't matter, it just works. So yeah, now that I've gotten into long range, I bought one. I got a Leopold Mark V 440 for like half off. It's really pricey, even half off, but damn, it's actually a nice piece of kit, despite the fact that I think it's made in China. Anyway, it's probably not the most robust, and it's for sure not the lightest tripod out there. But I think, as far as I can tell, it's the lightest, robust tripod, if that makes any sense. With the flavor of an ocean breeze from Gulf of America. America's breeze. Look at that hair, holy shit, dude, you can... Look, oh my god!
That's a model right there.
Easy breezy cover hop. So we covered the bolt gun, let's talk semi-auto. As a stand-in, I'm using a Munition Works Valkyrie. It's a semi-automatic, DPMS pattern, stainless steel, Criterion barrel, medium concord, rifle length gas, and all the other things you'd expect out of a precision-oriented AR-10. At some point, I will probably do a video on this bad boy. Throw in a bipod, a beefy boy EP5, and we're just a hair short of our original bolt gun weight at 14.5 pounds, and I don't even have a sling attached to this yet. All said and done, the bolt gun was printing about inch groups with mid-tier stuff, so gold match from Norma, and dropped significantly to almost a half-inch 10-shot group with much nicer stuff like gold metal match. With the Valkyrie, the AR-10, I'm just getting over an inch with Norma, though the nicer stuff, like that aforementioned gold metal match, didn't really reduce the group size by much. It consistently hovered at just over an inch. In the context of shooting really far, the bolt gun wins, hands down every time. I love shooting that thing. It's just, there's so much more baked in confidence. But, you know, obviously, a auto-loading rifle is incredibly nice when you're doing a lot of follow-up shots, combat spoilers, especially 400 yards and in, which is exactly what we're going to leverage when deploying this rifle. Much like the SPR, set up as a sniper-first system, fighting rifle second, that will be our goal here. The SAS, or the semi-automatic sniper system, will remain first and foremost a sniper. We don't want to compromise that. We're going to still run that very nice barrel, we're not going to cut weight there, and the scope itself will also remain a long-range scope first and foremost. But we can add some very tasteful key additions to make it a little bit more useful in a fighting rifle last resort context, allowing us to forego the need of bringing a whole-ass gun to the party like we did with the bolt gun. Adjustable gas to tune it down a hair, make it a bit smoother, with a bootleg BCG, a light, a sling, a chest rig capable of holding a decent number of .308 magazines, if not more, and perhaps, most importantly, a way to aim the thing that isn't the giant Hubble telescope attached to the top. In fact, this scope is so friggin' big, it generally was a problem trying to get an offset dot on here. To be sure, the EP5 is egregious in this regard. Most scopes are not nearly as bad. My Arasaka offset did not work because it would just go straight into the back of the scope turrets, and the piggyback didn't work either because same deal. I think in theory there are angled piggyback dots, but I don't like them, nor do I own some, so I skip. Actually, I do own some. Cut that out, Jamie. Cut that out. So anyway, what I ended up using was my angled adjustable Valhalla tactical offset, and it came in clutch here because I could adjust where it was and kind of sneak past the turret. I'm not the biggest fan of offset dots if I can help it, but I can't help it here. It's the only way really to get a dot on here, and it works well enough, and I was able to run and gun this thing pretty decently for what it is. My big push into climbing V6 boulders certainly helped strength-wise in managing this absolute pike of a gun. With it, we end up with a very clumsy battle rifle, more or less, which itself is already a very clumsy 5.56 general purpose rifle, but it works since this capability is mostly an emergency capability, not a primary fighting rifle. This would be a pretty clear-cut solution if ammo wasn't such a big issue. I discussed that at great length in my battle rifle video, but even with a dedicated 308 rig, you're maxing out at what, 7 magazines? Which sounds pretty decent, until you realize that's 140 rounds. And once again, I'm questioning the NGSW. So yeah, that's the two setups. Personally, my thoughts, maybe even contradictory, I think the bolt gun setup actually makes more sense in setups or situations, MET-TC, Ligma balls, where you want to lean on the fighting rifle first and foremost, but also want to lean into the extreme long-range performance, especially if you bring a Magnum round with something like this MRAD and 338, leaning into that, sniper as a standoff weapon.
That's so loud.
Almost.
I left.
This really makes the most sense in a recon or sniper context where we both want to cover that extreme long range of our weapon, but also the only time where we do expect or are willing to take a fight is when it's forced upon us, and that's going to be in the much closer range, hence the desire for a fully fledged fighting rifle. Outside of that, I would reach for the semi-automatic sniper setup that has accoutrements that make it more usable as a battle rifle. This is a little bit more useful for more, air quotes, vague mission types or stuff where we almost certainly will have some standoff range built in at all times, like, say, mountain fighting. Overall, kit weight is not going to be all that much different compared to a fighting rifle plus a very lightweight bolt gun, given the amount of weight that the ammunition that we're bringing here is going to make up. The semi-automatic capability means you're going to be much more flexible in that less sniper and more DMR type situation, so like 600 yards and in with rapid follow-up shots. And of course, it's useful as a sniper, very close in performance. I've actually technically shot this gun further than the bolt gun, and all the other stuff we added on makes it useful in a break contact scenario. Okay, that's been my spiel, my thoughts on bringing one of these guys to, the field. Was most of this pretty self-evident? Yeah, I could have probably wrote the script without even trying any of this stuff out, but, there were small things in here or there that I kind of figured out that I didn't quite realize until doing it. For example, the bolt gun, I think a lot of people expect the bolt gun to be kind of just a pain in the ass to bring to situations, and is more of a vestige of a last generation, and is more competition-oriented. But frankly, I'm much more open to the idea of parsing around the pieces of a bolt gun between the team, tripod, gun, ammunition, to get a much more capable extreme long-range gun, and then only having about 10 pound per ruck increase for every member of the squad, while making sure every single one of them is still running a normal 5.56 fighting rifle. But that's been my spiel. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks for coming on another Brass Facts autism-infused LARP fantasy video, and we'll see you guys next time.
The strength links shooting steel case ammo. Okay. Using a super safety and stuff. I don't like FL2.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, mine was the Delta.
Yeah.
And the... No, actually mine was the...